Hello and welcome to the interview portion of the Michael Shane Kelly Show. Today we have with us a very special guest, the one and only Rico Cortez. And we just had a great conversation a few minutes ago, but I want to talk to you now about the current condition our world is in. We have this, the war we're having right now with Iran. Israel, United States, what's happening? What do you see? Give us just your thoughts about where we're sitting, what we're looking at right now. Because some people think Ezekiel 38 war, some people think end times. Where are we at?
Well, if we follow biblical prophecy, we have to focus on the Middle East to understand these things. It's no coincidence that the war began, or the leader of Iran got killed, actually on the celebration of Purim. Purim is actually when Amalek, Haman, he made the decree to kill the Jews. So it's interesting on the same day.
Ooh, see, I did not realize that.
We follow all this stuff. And you got to remember something. Everything that goes on is based on verses in the Bible, in 1 Kings, when the kingdom was divided, in which God says, he makes a statement, says, anytime Israel disobeys the Torah, God raises up an adversary against them to bring them back to him. And it just so happened that Esau is that adversary, the descendants of Esau.
Wow.
So what we have here is a struggle in a greater magnitude I think the Western world have seen. We never really seen this like before. Now, what I think is important that the audience understands is that the government, whether you like the government of Israel or not, you have to remember that they're defending the land and the people. Defending the land and the people,
right,
is based on the prophets, on the promise that God gave Abraham, when in Genesis 15, that he made a promise to Abraham, then later to Isaac, then later to Jacob, that he will make a seed and give an inheritance, and that's the land. So what people don't realize in the Western world, just like they do not understand Islam, that the ideology, they're not going to stop.
No,
they're not going to stop. They're going to continue.
Stop. Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting is that now, when the fact that they're attacking Israel, they're not really attacking the people. They're attacking a land that does not belong to them. That belongs to God. The Bible says in Leviticus, you should not sell the land permanently, for it is mine. Israel is basically guests in God's land. That's their inheritance. But basically, they don't own it. God does. So when the whole thing that's happening, the whole Hormuz, about 3 weeks ago, I made a video in Spanish, and I told the audience, I said, the only two big pieces that Iran is going to do when they're losing is the stretch, the Hormuz. Is exactly what they did. And the next one will be trying to hit the Temple Mount.
Now that
happened this week.
That right there, because we talked about this the other day. Was it on Friday? It was a part of a missile supposedly from being shot down. A part of came within not very far from the actual Temple Mount itself.
Remember, October 7 was triggered because they believed, based on the red heifers, that the Jews want to take the Temple Mount. That was their excuse for attacking. So what I see is the enemies of God is Psalm 81, I think.
The Alaska Brigade, I believe they called themselves.
But you have Psalm 81 or 83, I can't remember right now. You have the enemies of God, and the enemies of God right now are raising up. So and it doesn't surprise me there's so much anti-Semitism right now, because in order for the world to realize who the one true God is, the world has to abandon their support for Israel. Because it has to be God who will stand up for them.
It is so heartbreaking, though.
It is.
Even though we see it in Scripture, even though we know this is coming, it's still heartbreaking to watch.
Of course.
Who wants to see this happen? But it's all a part of the plan. It's going to happen.
But remember that right now Islam is raising up in such a fast pace. Who would have thought that, they'll attack September 11, now they have a Muslim mayor. I mean, this is taking over all over the world. And I got to tell you, it's time for the believer to stand up and start becoming an influence in the political arena. Start making a difference. Right now, there's not a strong contingency of believers who will stand in the gap and say, these are the policies we will do. And we're letting foreigners come in and take that mantle, which we shouldn't. So in the Middle East, it's the pulse of the world. So right now, because I study the temple, I understand the procedures. I've been doing that for over 25 years.
Yeah.
I can see some of the things that are developing. prophetically, eschatologically in the church. Many people are looking for the sound of the trumpet. They don't know what it sounds like. They're looking for the Antichrist, but don't know what it's supposed to do. So what I'm hoping is be a bridge of communication to let them know, hey, when these things begin to happen, pay attention. For example, if, in my opinion, I believe that something will happen to the dome. If the dome is hit and is destroyed, personally, I'm not going to be too upset.
Yeah.
Because I know for us, it can trigger certain signs that could change the whole scope of geopolitical moves all over the world.
Well, when the war first started off, I actually had my daughter record me saying the same thing you're saying right now. The dome was going to be hit. So the question is going to be, is this, and what do you think happens if that happens? I think it's going to.
I think because Islam is an honor and shame culture, and the West don't understand that. You have to remember the Middle East as well as Asia is an honor and shame culture. The Western world is an innocent gate society, very different. To the Muslim world, destroying the mosque is an affront to their God, to their religion, and one of their perceived location to be holy.
Right.
So they will act upon it, not because they necessarily consider it the holiest place, but because it's a way of shaming them. That's why the Temple of Jupiter was placed there by the Romans, and then later on some churches, and later on and the dome, because in the ancient world, when a king conquers another king, it destroys their temples and it shamed them by putting their gods and their temples on top of it. It's a sign of authority and dominance. So that dome being destroyed, to the Muslim world, although it's not the holiest place,
no, so they have Mecca for that. Right, they have Mecca for that.
Right.
So
the message is we're being shamed. We have to stand up and defend our honor, even if to them it doesn't matter. They just say we have to do something, and I think that's what Iran is trying to do.
So even with the so that may make more sense. Even with the Abraham Accords, you think if the dome is hit, the unity that we currently see right now, no one's getting involved, everybody's kind of sitting back and watching. If the dome was hit, you think that would be a rallying call then for those other nations? It
will be to certain, in my opinion, to certain countries in the Middle East. You got to remember, if you pay attention to Saudi Arabia, they're not necessarily friends with Israel, but they leave Israel alone. Why? Because they have their identity.
Yeah.
They're Arabs. God gave their blessing through Ishmael. They don't have to envy anybody. The same blessing given to Israel was given to Ishmael. A great name, a great name.
That's right.
12 sons, and you got 12 here over here. Money and name and recognition. Money and name and recognition. So if you notice the Arabs, Saudi Arabians, comes from the family of Saud, but they're Arabs. They pretty much leave Israel alone. It are the other ones, Iran. They're not even Arabs. They're Persians. Then you have the Kuwaitis, and you have Iraq, and then you have the other countries like Hezbollah, they're not even Lebanese. They come from Jordan. There are people who left those places, Palestinians, that are basically creating havoc everywhere, as well as Gaza. Gaza belongs to Egypt. The Palestinians actually come from Egypt. They're Egyptians. Arafat was an Egyptian.
That's right. Yeah. So, all right. So we see maybe a possible unifying factor that would maybe cause
religiously. That's the only way they would do it.
Yeah.
Politically, no, but religiously they would. Because remember, people don't even know there's a difference between the Sunni and the Shiites. Okay, they don't like the Shiites. The majority of Muslims are Sunni.
Yeah.
So it's actually the same debate as a Christian and Jew. They don't believe in Yeshua and Jesus because we believe that he is not just, he's divine, right?
Right.
Well, the Jews don't believe in that. But the Muslims, they don't agree with the Shiites because they believe that the Mahdi or their Messiah is more or less divine. So it's the same argument.
That's very interesting.
That's what I found so far. I may be wrong, but this is what I've studied so far.
It's very interesting because when I was in Israel the second time I was there, I had an Arab there try to convince me that the Muslim world was closer to Christianity than the Jewish world was, and we got into a little small argument in the middle of the old town about that. And he was trying to convince Christians that Muslims are closer to Christianity than the Jews are, and it's an argument that's being used as a concept. It's an ignorant argument because it's not anything comparable there.
Right.
But so when this happens, if this happens, we're going to see a uniting. Now, Ezekiel 38 talks about setting hooks in their jaws and pulling them. Mm-hmm. That would be a pretty big hook, would it not?
It would be. I mean, right now you have geopolitical issues with money, with gold, with
a lot.
war, with this. I mean, the resources. Remember,
Oil,
they have the most desirable resources in the world. But more so, we have to consider the religious influence here.
Yeah.
I mean, if they really care about the resources, they would not be blowing themselves up. They all the money in Iraq, and they rather defend their religion than live in a lifestyle that could be conducive to a better, society. But yet they rather just defend their religion. They have all underneath that desert. They had all the gold, and they have all the oil, and yet they rather defend their ideology. So the West cannot do anything about this. By the way, this whole immigration issue. Mm-hmm. Let me give you a story. I went to Poland about 10 years ago, and they gave me a little tour around the capital. And I'm a history major, and I study that in biblical history. And I see this huge statue, and it was the king of Poland at the time holding the Muslim sword. I'm thinking, that's kind of unusual. And I asked, how come he has the Muslim sword? Because this was the place where the invasion to Europe was stopped by the Polish.
Oh, interesting.
September 11.
Oh, my Lord.
I think in the 1700s. I can't remember. Do you think the attack was by coincidence?
Oh, of course not.
So therefore, they stopped the influence of Islam right in Poland and Warsaw. Well, guess what? Now they're trying to take over Europe through immigration. And they are doing it now. And if you pay attention, how many Muslim mayors they have in England, in Europe. I mean, Holland, I think, in the Netherlands, is almost basically lost by now. And the United States is becoming pretty much permeated with that. And I think it's time for the believer and Messiah to stand up and start saying, wait a minute, we need to have God's worldview,
right? Not
another religion's.
Well, we have to. And in America, we've created an environment to where if you speak up against it, you're Islamophobic. And so there's ways to cancel. It's just a fear tactic, really, to keep people from speaking up what we should be saying.
Well, the thing is, like right now, the world is so worried about the threats. They're not paying attention to what those threats can mean for us as believers.
Right.
And the signs that we need to look for. Well, everyone is looking for this type of prophecy that is random, that is more like pulling out of the air. There are certain steps that must take place for eschatology to really feel like it's coming true. Like taking over the Temple Mount. Mm-hmm. We have the first heifers in 2,000 years. And as far as I heard from one of my friends who's in charge of them, one of them may be still kosher. Can you imagine they hit the dome? And now Israel defeats Iran. And now Israel's going to have a lot of authority in the Middle East. And all of a sudden now they do the slaughtering. Do you realize how important that will be? And let's just say that the altar is restored. Well, I mean, if that altar is restored, the chaos is going to ensue all over the world, from Christian side, in the Jewish side, because on both sides, they're not really studying that very much. Mm-mm. So there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. It will be the same thing. So there needs to be a voice of reason of people who research this that could hopefully bring some clarity to the believer to say, wait. These things are important for the coming of Messiah. These things are pivotal to understand the times that we're in the history of Israel, in the history of humanity. In the last 2,000 years, we've never had this scenario that could point to a restoration of the temple, or at least the altar. Well, everyone criticizes and don't realize that this is God's way to legally say, you mess with my house, I'll render judgment. And we live in exciting times. We need to be aware of them.
And I do believe that everything needed to build the temple is already there. From the stories I've read, maybe you can tell me differently, but the stone is there, all the artifacts are available. Is that true?
Well, I mean, they do have the Temple Institute. They've been working very hard the last 30 years to educate the people, and some other organizations or people that I know in Israel personally. Mm-hmm. They are trying to work on the things that are required, but they don't really have anything ready per se, but they're working on how to get them made. For example, the stone masons, they started doing them now. So now they have the quarries and, they're starting to learn how to do that. The people with the veil, the veil at the entrance of the temple was 76 feet high. It's like 6 stories, man.
Wow,
I mean, people have no idea.
I didn't realize it was that big.
There were 4 veils in the temple building in the 1st century. And one of them was as thick as my hand. The one at the entrance, what it was called? The heavens. So when you see the heavens rented open, that was an idiom for the veil of the temple. Josephus calls it like the Milky Way. It was designed as the Milky Way. That's why it's called the heavens. So these things are important. So they have that getting ready. They have kosher priests that were raised in Jerusalem in certain areas that they've never touched corpse impurity. They never touch anything with death. That will disqualify them. The ashes of the red heifer is what they will need in order for corpse impurity, because in the temple there was nothing connected with death can come in. So, and that's the whole message about resurrection.
Right.
That in the temple of God is about life, not death.
And right now, we believe we have one kosher heifer left. You mentioned it a few minutes ago. How would we in the United States? We're talking about we're dealing with this Islamic movement, like you said, as a mayor now in New York. I've actually preached an entire series about what Islam is to our whole church, so they would have a better picture of that. How do we get this across to Christianity? Do we get this across to people in the United States? What do they say? How do they deal with this?
It's very difficult because the Muslim world have taken advantage of the teaching in Christianity about love.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
you
yes.
know what I mean? Sometimes
yes.
we do not understand that love in the ancient world, in the time of the Bible, love was actual loyalty. If you tell me you love me and you're trying to stab me in the back, you're not showing loyalty. So they know the culture. We've basically been had. America, I was born in Puerto Rico. I'm a U.S. citizen, but I was not born in the United States. I was raised in the United States. And I love the United States. I'm grateful to be a U.S. citizen and to be raised in this country. And I will fight for it and I will defend it. Although I believe in the God of Israel and I love Israel and the land of Israel, but I'm also very loyal to this country because I've seen the goodness of it. And I never tried to take advantage of the open door to increase my life and progress and reach 39 countries teaching the Bible, and traveling 39 countries, students in 70. And, I'm grateful that I learned the language. I studied here. And Islam understands the weak point of Americans is their goodwill. Because, we are a nation of foreigners and immigrants, yes. But back in the day, if you were an immigrant, and by the way, New Zealand does it to this day, and Australia, if you want to apply for citizenship in New Zealand, you have to present a letter to show what do you bring to the table. How are you going to improve our country? Are you a businessman? Are you have a job? Can you create jobs? Are you an entrepreneur? What do? We ask these people to come. They have nothing to offer, and then we take care of them on top of it. And what do? They go in and they bomb and kill the people who host them. By the way, this is exactly done by design, because in the ancient Near East, as well as the Middle East, they understand about honor and shame. If you pay attention to the language, they will attack you because they'll say, you are attacking our children, our women, and our families. And in an honor and shame culture, the man preserves the honor, the women the purity. So what do when they travel everywhere? They rape the women, the local women, to shame them. Ooh. But you see, the Western world doesn't see it. And we sugarcoat it.
Right.
And we don't really want to even name them when they do something wrong. This is serious.
I believe it's even called, is it tequila? Am I saying it right? Where they're allowed to lie directly, even though so they can propagate the gospel of Islam, basically, and push it into political realms and be all sweet and kind and lie about it. But the truth is, they're allowed to by their doctrine and by the Quran.
Well, let's take the example of the New York mayor.
Yeah.
The guy's a Muslim. He not only is a Muslim, he's a communist. Okay? And it's interesting when you trace the history, communism and Islam always blends perfectly everywhere they go. It's amazing how they function. Socialism is crazy. Okay, so what's interesting is that this guy's a Muslim, but he's appointing people to his government that in a Muslim country will not even be part of anything. Try to appoint the same people the way they are in Saudi Arabia. So why does the Muslim community allow him to do it? Because exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
This is all done by design. He's there to destroy the country from within. It's always in every great empire, every great country at one point, their destruction never comes from the outside. It comes from within.
And we are truly a great nation. And that's, to be honest, would be the only way to take us down at this point in time. It's from within.
Yeah, but I think the only solution is turning back to God and repenting and telling the believers in Messiah to step up
and run
for office.
Yeah.
You don't need to be corrupt. actually set the standard, not to be corrupt, not to take a bribe, and try to bring forth the values that the Bible speaks, that this country wants.
Well, it's necessary. It's needed. It's needed. We need strong Christians to stand up and not fall for this ideology that will destroy. It destroys everywhere it goes. Basically it means to submit. Everything must submit to it.
Yeah,
it doesn't have a peaceful resolution to it. And
can we take Trump for an example?
Sure, go ahead.
I don't necessarily like everything he says.
Yeah,
but I support him. But if you watch the way the Muslims treat him in those nations, they don't play with him.
No, they
because don't. He does what he says. He stands on two grounds. He's not going to compromise the values that he believes for this country to appease them. And they all cater to him.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the presidents of the United States, when the Marines were established because of the pirates of Libya.
Exactly right.
The whole Marines were established because of this
fighting
problem.
the Muslims,
Yeah.
Islam.
So, I mean, this is no secret. Even the slave trade, people never want to talk about the Islamic slave trade. They will not allow the blacks to convert because now they have to treat them as equals. Do your research.
Well, to this day, I don't. To this day, you can buy the Islamic slave trade still exists today.
Absolutely.
And I was seeing the other day, I was watching a man talk about it, and he was saying for $400 off your phone, you could purchase a slave. Right now in some Arab nations. You're talking about, but we don't discuss this. We won't talk about something that happened 200-something years ago in our country. When it's happening right now and being led by that particular religion in ways we can't possibly imagine.
And the thing is, sad to say, I was just in Honduras, an incredible ministry, that they were ministering to kids who were basically, the narcos were trafficked them. And unfortunately in this country, we are equally as guilty because we're still doing a form of slavery and abusing of children to trafficking with the narcos and all that stuff. And I think that in itself is the highest level of oppression. And even though they're doing it in their religion, but us, this country, tolerating that type of behavior, not having any accountability, no one is paying. I think when we begin to keep people accountable for doing that, I think then the Lord would open the eyes of the people to see the enemy within. But we are equally guilty when it comes to moral failures.
I think it's a good spot right there to call this episode for right now. I would suggest you guys go online, check out Rico Cortez's ministry, Wisdom and Torah. You can see it online on YouTube. Central Triad Church, he ministered here just recently. We're so thankful you tuned in. This has been a beautiful conversation. I'm glad we had it. And thank you for watching the Michael Shane Kelly Show. God bless, guys. We'll talk to you soon.